Hello everyone, Hammad here. Welcome to my channel, Cloud with Hammad, DIY Cloud Learning to Inspire. For today in our cloud series, this is a part 2 of my video series in which I will be integrating on-premises Active Directory services with Azure Active Directory using a tool called AD Connect to synchronize all the object, which is users and computers, through Azure AD. During our first video, I deployed an on-premises Active Directory. So if you want to learn how to deploy AD, then I would encourage you to go ahead and check my first video on AD deployment. Also, to recap, in my third video, I will deploy Windows Virtual Desktop WVD using on-premises domain, which I deployed in my first video. And lastly, in my final video, I will deploy an Azure PaaS service called Azure Domain Services ADDS and use the same service to log into Windows Virtual Desktop without using on-premises domain. But before we do that, if you are new to my channel, please subscribe, like, and share with friends. I would really appreciate it. Now, without further ado, let's go to my notes. Alright, so we are going to quickly discuss in my previous video I showed you how to deploy an AD. So in this video we will quickly discuss what is AD Connect and how it works. We'll quickly discuss some documentation and some definitions for you to have a little bit of concept. Again, with the visual ID, I would say I already have deployed a domain like Active Directory domain on premises, and we will use a utility called AD Connect as mentioned, and we'll sync that through our Azure AD. Once that is connected, we would be able to basically synchronize user ID on premises and ID onto the cloud. And then once that is all set up, we'll actually, in our third video, we'll deploy a Windows Virtual Desktop. That basically the feature requires you to have a domain controller. So for that we will actually use this domain controller, on-premises domain controller, to deploy these virtual desktop. And then lastly, in my fourth video, which is actually this one, virtual desktop video, and then in fourth video that I will create, basically we'll deploy a service called AD Active Directory Domain Services. This is basically a PaaS service, and you can deploy this on cloud. It takes about an hour 15 minutes to sync, deploy, and everything. But what happens is once we deploy this, you don't really need an on-premises domain services. It basically acts as a domain controller. So what's going to happen is once I deploy this, we will actually the on-premises domain controller will sync with AD, and AD will sync with Azure Domain Services. We'll talk about it when we go through the video actually. And so for now, we'll just quickly discuss this, a little bit about the documentation. I think we already have, let me give you, so I already have this link here, and then basically what we're going to do is these are the reference point. These are two documents that you need to see, and for the slides we'll quickly discuss a little bit about slides. So this is considered to be a hybrid identity where you have some user ID on the premises and some of the user IDs are on the domain, on the Azure domain. So again, we will discuss about AD Connect, Cloud Sync, authentication option, what is password hash character, Kerberos, federation of Azure ID, and password writebacks. So again, let's quickly discuss this and let's go to deployment quickly. AD Connect, what is AD Connect? It's basically to integrate your on-premises directory with Azure Active Directory, and then it provides common identity for your Office 365, Azure, and then any SaaS application that is running on Azure AD. There are several authentication options to enable hybrid identity. So you can see in this picture that you have on-premises domain, and then you are users, you're logging into cloud with the Azure Active Directory. So any of these applications, Google Cloud, SAP, ServiceNow, Office 365, or your own personal application, you can basically use like AD on-premises AD to sync with AD Azure and sync it with and connect with any of these applications. What is AD Connect's Cloud Sync? It's an alternate method to integrate your on-premises directory with Azure Active Directory. Uses the AD Cloud Provisioning Agent, which is what we're going to deploy, and run stand alone or alongside Azure AD. So yeah, that's that's going to happen. So I'll show you in my lab as well. Authentication option, basically you can actually password hash synchronization, PHS, can be synchronized and encrypted version of password hash for user account, pass through authentication, and then ADFS authentication. These are type of authentication. Document actually gives you all the detail. You can read it here as well. And then, you know, what type of password hash synchronization, user password for on-premises Active Directory to cloud-based Azure AD, sign into Azure AD service using the on-premises password, and improve productivity for users and reduce costs for the help desk costs. So basically, you have a password in on-premises, you can use your device, and it would synchronize. It would basically match with the AD Azure AD to get into any of these applications through Azure AD. All right, so again, pass-through authentication, it supports user to single sign on into all web browser-based application and into Microsoft Office client application. It's a free feature and can be enabled via Azure AD Connect. It's not only for user sign-in, but allows an organization to use other Azure AD features like MFA, self-service password. So in this picture, you're a user, you're logging into Azure AD, and then that Azure AD actually has a pass-through authentication. Basically, that authentication is using Windows Server Active Directory, and it basically goes through this authentication agent, goes to on-prem domain, and then it basically authenticates and sends back to cloud. So that's how the pass-through works. Okay, and then Federation ID is basically, Federation is collection of domain that have established trust. You can federate your on-premises environment with Azure AD and use this federation for authentication and authorization. The sign-in method ensures that all users' authentication occurs on-premises. So basically, any internal users, they can go to Azure AD Cloud and AD, it would authenticate, and basically it would create a trust between on-premises and Azure AD. You can log in through proxy and you can log in through ADFS. Some decisions, I would not go in detail. Writebacks is user password writeback to configure Azure AD to write password back to your on-premises Active Directory. A component of Azure AD Connect, available subscribe or from premium Azure AD edition, remove the need of setup a managed on-premises SSPR solution. So password writeback, we might not be able to see it because we don't have a premium license, but I'll check it out if you can. It's basically when you synchronize with Azure AD, you can, whenever you update a password in Azure AD, it goes back to on-premise and it writes the password. It updates the password actually. All right, so once again, if you have any question, go ahead and ask me. Again, what is Azure AD? It has all the documentation. I'll leave the link. Same thing we discussed. All the details are here. Go through this. I would also look at the Cloud Sync. What is Cloud Syncs? What are, like, you know, comparison. And so anyways, this is a concept, so I would advise you to go ahead and review that concept as well if you'd like to. Otherwise, you can feel free to call or message me and I will help you with that. All right, so without further delay, let's go to our lab. All right, so I'm logged into my Azure portal. The first thing is we'll basically start our VM, which is our on-prem VM, which we created in first video. I think you already have known this. If you don't know, just go ahead and check out my first video on how to deploy an on-prem domain. I already have started this, so this is where we are. What's going to happen is once we log in, it will pop up the server manager, and from there, but I closed it so that I can show you how to get to server manager. So this is your server. I would click start and I would go to server manager. You can actually go to here as well. Just click here. It will open up and it will load all the servers here. I have a couple of stuff going on. So what we need to do is, this is the domain for AD. You can manage your domain from here. Let me show you our, so for you to load up your users and computer, click onto tool and then users and computer. So this is going to load up your tree of domain. So this is your forest, and then in forest you have some users, which I think I already created. Test admin is for the local account, and then we created these two, these Detroit and Michigan and whatever. And actually I created some groups as well. Anyway, so we will synchronize this using Azure AD Connect. How to get to it? So I'm going to minimize this for a second, and then I will go here, home, and then you see this Azure AD. I would click on Azure AD here, and then you will log into Azure AD, the whole dashboard for that. AD Connect, it's already enabled basically. So what happens is, this is where you have overview, tenant, everything. Users, all my users are here. It has everything. You can reset. I might be able to do another lab for introduction on AD as well. If you really like to see, just let me know in the comment section. Group and roles and identity. So over here we'll go to Azure AD Connect. This is here, and then I had it in previously, so that's why it shows up. Download. Click here, takes you to Microsoft here on the web. This is the place you will get it. I will leave the link as well, and then you will download this. So I would copy the link address, and I will go to my VM, minimize this, and I would open a browser, and I would hit enter. And I would save it. So while it's doing that, I want to share one more thing here. So if I go here on my AD, you see these San Jose, Fremont, Detroit, and then these. I think I don't have it. I removed it when I was trying to get a lab ready for you guys. So let me see if I can find San Jose. Nothing. Okay. Yeah, though you don't have anything. So once we sync it, you should be able to see all this in the Azure AD. So again, we'll go back here, minimize this. The software is complete downloaded, so we'll go, and I would install. Oh, this installation requires TLS, but it's not enabled. So I think TLS, this message happens. This is a good troubleshooting. So there was a documentation that you have to go in like PowerShell to enable. So give me 1 second. Let me find that out. Alright, so this message is because incorrect version of TLS. So I already have got the document up for you. What I'll do is you just have to run the PowerShell command. It's basically enforce Azure AD Connect. So it gives you all the detail. I'll leave the document as well should you get an error message. All I have to do is run this command in PowerShell. So let's do it. So I would go back to my exit this here, and then I would say ISE. It's done. So close this. Alright, so we are good here. So welcome to Azure AD. This is the agent. Click continue. It's going to say if you have single window server, which is what we do, it shows up. Identity as AD Forest, which we have, and then configure password hash, initial synchronization, attribute, auto upgrade, and then so we can do customize, and then we can say, you know what, we specify a custom domain installation. We don't need that. Existing service account, import synchronization. So we go back and let's try to see what's custom. Okay, it doesn't give any option to synchronize express setting. Okay, that's fine. So now what we need to do is we need to connect to Azure AD with a global administrator. So for a global administrator, I think I haven't explained this yet. So if I go to my user ID and I created a global administrator. So it says test admin. This is my global administrator. So this is actually, you need to have that in Azure AD before you can start working in your app on-prem domain. So for on-prem domain, to log into Azure AD, you need a global administrator, because without that, the link is not going to happen. So I already created a test user. If you are confused, feel free to ask me or reach out to me, but I created this test user onto domain. And then what I would do is this is global admin. So this is a global admin. I clicked on it. So I'm going to use this test user as this ID, copy, and I would go back here and paste. And it's connecting to online to verify credential. Again. So this is logging into my tenant. So you should have an ID that is going to be a global admin in your tenant, so that you can basically connect to your tenant and synchronize. So I hope that makes sense. And obviously I have my authentication set up. I will approve it on my phone and it's going to verify. And it did. So once that is done, and then I will log into my local domain. So this is the domain that is like the on-premises ID. So this ID was created when we first set up this domain, like the password. So what I would do is I would use this to log in. So when you set up this machine, you would have a domain like local domain. So that's where that's what it's asking. So I would say actually, let's do this. And it says it's so once you click install, it will do the following: synchronize engine, AD Connect, configure the domain connector, enable password hash synchronization, enable upgrade and synchronization service for this computer. So I will hit install and it's going to start installing. So while it does that, okay, well, let me show you while this is happening. In the meantime, I'm going to actually pull up a command as well for force sync. So let it run for a second, and then so it's configuring. I'm gonna wait. In the meantime, let me show you what I was trying to share with you. So minimize this, and then I will open another window. This is basically a command to force your sync using PowerShell. What's going to happen is once that is going to happen, it's going to synchronize the ID from on-prem. It takes time. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the command to do it on spot. So manually forcing sync Azure AD connecting using PowerShell. So obviously you need to know how the PowerShell, where the PowerShell is, and then you need to know what server you're doing, and then you need to make sure you have a module installed, which is Azure AD import Azure AD sync module. This is the sort of like a file, like a library, and then you can just run these follow command just to make changes to the data, or you can do a complete sync. So what we'll do is we'll just use this command. Let it complete this first. So this is creating a directory synchronization account. It's actually going to, it's basically configuring account in the Azure AD. I'll show you everything once this is done. It's still happening. So it's synchronizing my domain. Installing the agent. And the configuration is finished. So basically configured succeeded, synchronization process has initiated. So the configuration is completed. You can log into Azure or Office portal, and then active recycle is not enabled, and I would hit exit. All right, so the next thing is we can click here and it will load the first synchronization. So it says that cannot change configuration, active cannot proceed further as configuration changes cannot be made at this time because the synchronization is happening. So I would close this. I will go in to see if the service, so there is a service called synchronizing service. So I will click here and I would see what's happening. So you can see that, you know, the synchronization service, this is another service that it shows that, you know, it's exported, full synchronization happened. So you can force it by running this select AD, it's full import, and then it's gonna go in progress and it's gonna synchronize. You can do this, but it automatically, as you can see, the reason I was getting that error message over there because it was happening, but you can go here and synchronize both sides. So run, use this, and full import. You can do deltas as well. Click OK. And that succeeded too. Okay, I'm gonna close this. You can do other stuff as well. Stop and, you know, connect or change it, or so close this and go back here. And then you can configure the AD Connect by doing all the, so synchronization option, if I click here and I would say login. Again, my phone, I would approve it, MFA, and then it's just gonna, so over here when you click on it, you can change the directory, or you can configure the whatever the settings are for those. Next, password hash, group write back, device write back, AD, hybrid, whatever. So this is how you will set up, like if you want to reconfigure. I will close this for a second because I don't want to do anything. One more thing. So let's say the synchronization happens in certain intervals. So let's say, let's go back to Azure AD and check it out. So if I go back here and user, and I type in, so I would say this time San Jose. So now you can see that the one that we just deployed, it's already here. And then same thing for group as well. I would So group would be, I think I created as Michigan. Those are the groups I created. Did I California as well? Okay, and then one more thing that you want to see. So these created these on. I won't worry about these, but these two, AAD sync admin, sync admin. So these are the account that Azure like on-premises AD created. So this is also created while you set up the sync. Anyways, let's go back to our over here, and then one more thing. So let's say if I have a user and I want to create a user, so I would create a new user, and I would want to say I would say Melpitas, and then Melpitas, next, and I would just force a password. And I would hit next and finished. So this actually has been created, but unless I do a sync, it would not sync. So we just created the account. So if I go here and users and computers, users, and then I think I created Melpitas. So this is what I just created, right? So I'm gonna go ahead and sync it. You can do it through PowerShell as well. I'm gonna just go to sync service, and I would do another run. It's in progress. Full import done, both of them. One delta, which is Melpitas. So you can see it says Melpitas here. So this was changed. So I'm going to close this and go to Azure AD and see if I have a user. So I would type in P. There you go. So Melpitas was synchronized. All right, so that will be it for today. As indicated, we created Azure AD Connect, and we basically what we did with Azure AD Connect, and we synced with Azure AD. Now in my next video that's going to come up, we'll just create Windows Virtual Desktop. This is a big topic that's a good lab. So I will probably get some documentation. We'll talk about breadth first, and personal dedicated like sessions. So hit that like button and subscribe to bell icon so that if any new video comes in, you can notify yourself by that. Until next time, have a great day.